Number 10. Aaron Slaughter. Aaron Slaughter is not quite as new as some of the others on this list, but I really wanted to shout him out and the series he's from, so I'm extending my definition of new for just that purpose by about a year. He is from a series that I can't quite say the name of here on the YouTubes, so instead we are going to use an acronym. Is that cool with you? It's cool with me. We're going to use the acronym of SIKTC. What can I say? It is a title that has the word killing in it, so there's a hint if you're looking to look it up. And it's about basically monster hunters and the people that they help as they travel around trying to eliminate vicious creatures who prey on innocents. Erica Slaughter is the first monster hunter we are introduced to through the series, and Aaron Slaughter is basically kind of like her adoptive brother. He not only appears in SIKTC, making his first appearance in issue number 3 I believe of that series, but also now appears in the spin-off title House of Slaughter. SIKTC and Aaron Slaughter are both properties coming from Boom Studios. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us that you love us by clicking that like button? Why not show indie comics that you love them? Because let's be honest, they deserve it. They deserve a thumbs up. Give it to them. Number 9. Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn is a hero who you may think of as old now, considering he first made a very brief first appearance on a cover back in 2002. But this gunslinger that we're talking about here is not the same Gunslinger Spawn as the one that first appeared back in 2002, and later got his origin story shared in 2008. This Gunslinger Spawn is not Old Job, but instead Jovi, who is much younger and also is believed to be Mexican in regards to his heritage. His initial appearance was a bit of a mystery, with people simply wondering how Gunslinger Spawn had made his way to the future. But in issue number 3 of the Gunslinger Spawn series, we learned that this Gunslinger Spawn was definitely not who we expected when he left his Spawn form, revealing a completely different face from the one we'd expected when we believed he was Old Job. While there is still much for us to learn about Jovi in regards to his past and his origin, it is implied that Old Job's Hellspawn powers were somehow passed on to him. This version of Gunslinger Spawn first appeared back in Spawn issue 308 in July of 2020. Later in Spawn Universe issue number 1, we would see him featured in a short story at the end of the comic where he had no discernible face, which is what made people assume that he was the original Gunslinger Spawn we were first introduced to back in the early 2000s.
Number 8. Bitewing. There's nothing that wins me over more than a puppy. But then DC goes and gives a puppy a 3-legged gray blue-eyed pitbull puppy and gives it to Nightwing, probably one of the best members of the Bat family. And then they go and give it the nickname of Bitewing. I literally teared up just typing this part because of the overload of adorable that I got while looking at this. Haley the dog was being chased and mistreated by some teenagers when Dick Grayson stepped in, rescued, and adopted her. Now, the first sidekick turned full-on hero in DC Comics has his very own super pet, especially after she was given a costume and the ability to speak from a 5th-dimensional imp. Now, she fights alongside Nightwing as Bitewing, and it's cute. It's very cute.
Number 7. Escapade. I love Escapade, and I also love her BFF Morgan Red. While initially introduced as a criminal in the Marvel Voices Pride issue of this year, I think it's safe to say that Escapade and her friend Morgan and his genetically engineered flying turtle pal, Hibbert, will soon become a team of mutant heroes instead of anti-heroes. I mean, even if they are criminals who steal stuff, they really only try to steal stuff from the worst people, which makes them still pretty altruistic. Escapade is a trans mutant named Sheila Sexton, whose powers involve swapping places with whoever she decides to use her mutant powers on. This can be someone as low level as a random passerby, or someone as high level as another superpowered being who is about to defeat her, or even the President of the United States. So much potential for this power.
Number 6. Bolt. Since the live-action Black Adam movie was announced, DC decided that they would also put out a Black Adam solo series for the first time. And in the first issue, it puts Black Adam on the ropes of mortality. In response to this, Black Adam finds his descendant, Malik Adam White, a medical student living in the Bronx. Basically, Black Adam just tells this guy he is going to succeed Black Adam and inherit his power, and then he forces him by having one of his people pop a cap in Malik, and the only way to save himself is to take Black Adam's ring and say Shazam. While Black Adam calls Malik White Adam, Malik gives a good little lecture about the inherent racism there. So he prefers to go by Thunderbolt or just straight up Bolt. From what I've read, I really like his character, and he is supposed to represent a sort of form of redemption for the character of Black Adam because, as they say in the comic, there is no true redemption for Black Adam. Not at this point, at least.
Number 5. Amass. Amass is a really cool new mutant. They made their first appearance in Steve Orlando's Marauder series in issue number 4. Amass is a mutant of Threshold, the oldest mutant civilization to have ever existed. They, along with 2 other mutants, had their minds stored within a codex, hoping that they would arrive in the future after being restored and would be able to seek help for their people who were on the brink of extinction when they last left them in the past. Amass's mutant powers allowed them to physically combine mutants and their powers together, joining together to create one basically big ball of mutants, which kinda looks like one big being. Hence their mutant name of Amass. This appears to both psychologically and physically combine whichever mutants they choose with themselves, with their new combined form also possessing all the powers of said mutants, which I think is pretty nuts.
Number 4. Grey Wolf. Of the characters I'm talking about on this list, my favorites are absolutely a 3-way tie between Tosin, Bitewing, and this guy, Grey Wolf. Okay, so Lex Luthor was running a crime-fighting experiment around the world trying to create a group of his own similar to Batman Incorporated, with the ultimate goal of creating Abyss, his own Batman. But then he abandoned all these projects that then went wild doing their own thing. So Batman Incorporated's international team, being led by Ghostmaker, go on a mission to bring them down in Batman 2022 Annual Volume 3 Number 1 from July. Their first mission is to Kazbek, Chechnya, to take on Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf was unleashed on the city to help its citizens who had been exposed to Lazarus resin that had made them all extremely violent. With Ghostmaker, he was able to cure the residents and join Batman Inc. as a good guy, but he displayed enough skill to best Dark Ranger, El Gaucho, and Batman of Japan in a 3-on-1 fight, and he beat Wingman 1-on-1. Also, he's like 7 feet tall minimum. Super cool.
Number 3. Black Mist. Black Mist is a completely new character who is not yet a member of Batman Incorporated, but who might end up becoming one in the future. She was actually one of my favorite characters to appear in Batman Inc. issue number 1 from 2022. Not only does she look like a badass, but she also seems to be wary of joining up with Batman Inc. Black Mist appears as a sort of consulting detective in issue number 1 of the 3rd volume of this series. We don't know much about her yet, but she seems to be working with Batman Incorporated to help them solve the mystery behind just who is killing all the teachers of Batman and Ghostmaker, and why and how this perpetrator is doing that. One thing we do know about Black Mist straight out of the gate is that she seems to have history with the Knight. The two recognize each other and are presented as friendly to one another.
Number 2. Egro the Unbreakable. Okay, so this one definitely took me by a bit of a surprise. Coming out of the 2022 volume of Thunderbolts, specifically issue number 2, we are introduced to Egro. Egro is a super interesting little troll-looking monster who lives peacefully on Monster Isle. But you see, Egro heard of the monster exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, so naturally he expected to go and see his own statue. He just had to make sure that it captured his true beauty. But what the heck? They didn't have a statue for Egro the Unbreakable? An insult like that could not fly, so he obviously had to destroy the other statues for the other monsters, which brought the Thunderbolts to fight him. Instead, after Egro punched Power Man through the roof with his big lava hands and incapacitated Persuasion with his telepathic abilities, which helped him learn English, he surrendered to America Chavez and explained the situation. Then, he was invited to join the team. Yay! Happy ending for the little steroid Yoda.
Number 1. Nightmite. Just like Superman has Mr. Mxyzptlk and Batman has Batmite, Dick Grayson, the superhero known as Nightwing, now has his own imp superfan from the 5th dimension, Dixel, though Dixel prefers to be known as Nightmite. While it might seem strange to put an imp from the 5th dimension on a superhero list given, you know, some of their track records, Nightmite is genuinely well-meaning and helpful, unlike most other imps who are somewhat mischievous or just downright troublesome. Being an imp from the 5th dimension also means that Dixel can be super powerful, as he has magical, reality-bending, and warping powers. Nightmite made his first appearance very recently in the comics, as of the time of this recording, in issue number 98 of Nightwing, which was released in November of 2022. Number 10. Starling. Starling is the girlfriend of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. At least, At the time of this recording, I'm pretty sure she is. Starling is Tiana Toombs, the granddaughter of Adrian Toombs, who is the villain known as the Vulture. Tiana's father is Adrian's son, Frankie, and her mother is Lenora. While she often sports wings in homage to her grandfather, she isn't a villain like he is more often known for being. In fact, Adrian actually helped Tiana after her father abandoned her and her mother, and then later after her mother tragically died in surgery. Adrian had always brought money to Lenora to help support her and his granddaughter, and after Lenora's death, he actually offered to become Tiana's guardian, which she accepted. He was also the one who gave Tiana her suit and actually inspired her to become the hero she is today, despite he himself usually being known as a villain. I kinda love when legacy characters go the opposite way of any other characters they're known as being descendants of. Starling made her first appearance back in Saladin Ahmed's run on Miles Morales' Spider-Man from 2019 in issue number 5. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you can also go check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for even more good old Marvel content. Number 9. Somnus. Somnus was first introduced in a super cute story that was featured in the 2021 Marvel Pride issue. In his origin story, we learn that Carlo Valentino is actually an old flame of Daken. They met in Canada in the 1960s in Toronto, Ontario. At the time, Carl was living a closeted life, both as a mutant, I believe, and also as a queer man. During a one-night stand, Carl used his powers while they slept to live an entire life out with Daken in their dreams together. His mutant powers basically allow him to manipulate and control the dreams of others, an oniromancer as we would say, which is how he was able to do this. Seemingly spooked by this experience, having lived a whole life with Carl in his dreams, only to wake up and find it had been just that, a very vivid dream, and that Daken was still as he was the day prior after living a whole life overnight, Daken was sure to leave before Carl awoke. While the two never really talked after this, Daken seemingly never forgot Carl. After Carl passed on, presumably from old age, with Daken attending his funeral, Daken actually asked to have him resurrected, giving him a second chance to live the life that he always wanted, proudly, out of the closet, both in terms of his orientation and as a mutant. Carl took the name Somnus for himself, his mutant name, and would later join Kate Pryde's Marauders team. I also super duper love his design. His outfit is so good. Somnus is such a cool character.
And at number 8 is Grey Wolf. Okay, so apparently Lex Luthor was running crime-fighting experiments around the world trying to create a group of his own similar to Batman Incorporated, with the ultimate goal of creating Abyss, aka his new evil Batman. He then abandoned all these projects because that's what you do when you're a villain. The projects went wild, doing their own thing, causing problems all over. So, Batman Incorporated's international team, being led by Ghostmaker, are sent to clean up the mess in Batman 2022 Annual Volume 3, Number 1 from July. Their first mission is to Kazbek, Chechnya to take on Grey Wolf. Now Grey Wolf was unleashed on the city to help its citizens who had been exposed to a Lazarus resin by Lex Luthor that made them all extremely violent. Once the Ghostmaker realized that Grey Wolf was actually a pretty good guy, they teamed up and were able to cure the residents, and Grey Wolf joined Batman Inc. as a good guy and possibly one of the strongest members outside of Ghostmaker himself. He displayed enough skill to best Dark Ranger, El Gaucho, and Batman of Japan in a 3-on-1 fight, and he beat Wingman 1-on-1. Also, he's like 7 feet tall minimum. So cool. Number 7. Bolt. Going along with the hype of the live-action Black Adam movie, DC decided that they would also put out a Black Adam solo series for the first time. And in the first issue, it puts Black Adam on the ropes of mortality. In response to this, Black Adam finds his descendant, Malik Adam White, a medical student living in the Bronx. Basically, Black Adam just tells this guy he is going to succeed Black Adam and inherit his power, and then he forces him to do so by almost taking his life, forcing the guy to save himself by taking Black Adam's ring and saying Shazam. While Black Adam calls Malik White Adam, Malik gives a good little lecture about the inherent racism there, so he prefers to go by Thunderbolt or just straight up Bolt. Now from what I've read, I really like this character. He's smart and spunky, and he is supposed to represent a sort of form of redemption for the character of Black Adam because, as they say in the comic, there is no true redemption for Black Adam, not after all he's done. Number 6. Duo. Recently, DC Comics has announced that they are relaunching Milestone, and that's exciting because we haven't seen much of their characters like Icon, Static, and Rocket in a hot minute, and I love all of them. What's interesting is that instead, we got a wholly new character, or characters, in the form of Duo. This new addition to Earth M follows Dr. David Kim and Dr. Kelly Vu, who get fused together in a crazy accident, which is slightly reminiscent of the DC character Firestorm, but this is different. For one, they look way cooler in my opinion. But the comic follows the pair learning more about each other and their newfound powers based on nanotech that include the ability to heal almost instantly, making them essentially immortal, the ability to interface with technology, metamorphosis, density control, and more as time goes on and they find further control. Duo is potentially one of the most powerful beings from Milestone if things keep going the way they're going, and I highly recommend checking out their story. Number 5. Bat Prince. This alternate version of Batman belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and son to the L family with his network of Robins and his brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out last year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks sweet! And maybe one day I'll bring it in to show you guys. Maybe. But definitely read Dark Knights of Steel. Number 4. Tim Fox. Timothy Jace Fox is the oldest son of Wayne Enterprises CEO Lucius Fox and the brother of Lucas Fox, Tamara Fox, and Tiffany Fox. He has a long history of estrangement from his father and rebels against the affluent surroundings he grew up in. While he was a bit of a rebel and a playboy for a long while, Tim found himself being brought back to reality after he caused the passing of a man while driving distracted. Following the shame of this and his enrollment at Sanford Military Academy, he went off into the world refining his skills with different mentors, the most well known of whom being Katana and his best friend Vol. Tim became a revolutionary and a mercenary, taking on the new name of Jace. Eventually he returned to Gotham, and even later he eventually discovers the Hibernaculum, which I hope I'm pronouncing right. It's a giant armory that also contained a prototype bat armor. He takes the Hibernaculum as his base of operations, and in a last-ditch effort to prevent a massacre, he dons the bat armor. Now, after a failed initial debut as Batman, he goes back to the drawing board and creates himself a new suit and becomes the official new Batman. Official new Batman, but there's also the regular Batman still. I don't know. He's been a little anti-joining up with pretty much anyone, not a member of the Bat family, and refusing Jonathan Kent's offer to join the new Justice League, and I'm kind of curious what will become of his character as time goes on, because nothing's really happening. Number 3. Dreamer. Unlike other characters on today's list, the precognitive hero Dreamer debuted in Supergirl as part of the CW's Arrowverse, making her comic debut in DC Pride 2022 #1 in August of 2022. The character, whose real name is Nia Nal, has a heritage that is half human and half Naltorian, an alien species. Some Naltorian women have access to powers that come from the dream realm, and the subsequent dream energy, which gives them precognition, astral projection, energy projection, and the ability to travel through other people or animals' dreams, which is an incredibly interesting idea for a superpower. The Naltorian women who can do this are given the title of Dreamer. Now for Nia Nal, she had visions of the passing of the Justice League at the hands of Henry Bendix, the moment that would spark the very recent Dark Crisis event. It's revealed that she is also related to Nuranal, a descendant of Nia's who is part of the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century. Whether that will factor into her story or if we will see any time-traveling related adventures between the two remains to be seen as Nia makes her mark in the DC universe. Number 2. Circuit Breaker. Jules Jourdain is so freaking new that they haven't even debuted yet. Jules Jourdain, aka Circuit Breaker, is a new transgender superhero getting their own series that will officially debut this Valentine's Day. And yes, that's coming up, so if you forgot, this is your friendly reminder. Or if you're single, sad, and lonely, know that you ain't alone. I am with you. Writer and artist AJ Kaplan teased the hero in a tweet in January of 2023, mentioning the character's use of the quote, still force. Apparently, this still force is like the opposite to the speed force that we all know for being utilized by the Flash and other speedsters. What this means for the trans non-binary hero is yet to be revealed, obviously. The speed force has been used to go so fast that time stands still, so what the still force does exactly is leaving me extremely curious, to be honest. But I'm excited to see what Circuit Breaker does with it when they debut in DC's Lazarus Planet Dark Fate #1 out on Valentine's Day. And in at #1, Dr. Multiverse. Dr. Multiverse is alone in the multiverse, meaning there is only one of her. Originating from Earth 8, Maya was bathed in cosmic energies and was granted the powers of the multiverse. This basically means she is able to see variants and alternate versions of people living in different realities. She can see people and objects passing between dimensions, and she has the ability to locate and track anything she has come into contact with throughout the multiverse. She also has access to vast energy manipulation abilities which let her fire blasts and create shields, but she can totally open up portals to other universes and send people back to their own universe. This former member of the Retaliators became part of the Justice League Incarnate, using her multiversal powers to help this multiversal team of heroes. She's like a DC version of Marvel's Captain Universe, Starbrand, and America Chavez. I think she's alright, so you should definitely think she's alright too, and check her out. But coming in at #10 is Red Canary. The Black Canary is one of the coolest female heroes in the DC universe. She may fly under the radar for a few people, but she has made a name for herself as a powerful hero and a fierce fighter. So, when the new legacy character of Red Canary showed up on the scene, she had some big shoes to fill. The thing is, she's so new, appearing in Dark Crisis issue #3 in October 2022, that we kind of know nothing about her. We know her first name is Sienna, and we know she is a college student. She responded to Nightwing's call after the passing of the Justice League, and she fought in the mission that went out into the multiverse, but we don't even know her powers. We can assume that they're at least similar to Black Canaries, but I don't even want to say that because we just simply do not know. What we can say is that she absolutely has potential if her first appearances saw her jump into a multiversal battle. Only time will tell, but she looks cool as hell though. #9, Monkey Prince. First appearing in DC Festival of Heroes, the Asian Superhero Celebration #1 from July 2021, Monkey Prince is the son of the legendary Monkey King, Sun Wukong from Chinese folklore. Because of this, Monkey Prince, aka Marcus' son, is essentially a demigod, born in the Phantom Zone. But he had no idea of this. He was taken in by criminals Winston and Laura Shugel Shen, and he grew up with them, with the two surprisingly making good parents despite the fact that they were running around working for different criminals in Gotham City. When Marcus was a kid, he was woken up during a thunderstorm in the middle of the night to find his parents being interrogated by Batman. Interrogated with his fists, because that's the Batman way. This gave Marcus a fear of thunderstorms, rain, and water, and Batman, plus a hatred for superheroes. Which is funny because once his powers were awoken by a servant of his Monkey King father, granting him an insanely cool form of immortality and regeneration, the ability to summon clouds that he can fly on, clone creation, shapeshifting, underwater breathing, and the superhero starter pack of physical upgrades, he did indeed become a superhero. He's a really unique character with a ton of storytelling potential, and he's already teamed up with a few characters like Batman, Aquaman, and a few others. Definitely check him out.
#8, Ellipses Howl. Ellipses Ellie Howl is one of the main characters from Crossover. Crossover is an ongoing Image Comics series that's currently on hiatus that jumps into the real world, telling the story of a literal crossover that happens between the comic book world and everyday Earth. As heroes and villains jump into the real world, chaos ensues, and it's up to the main characters to find a way out of this mess and back home. Ellipses Howl is one of these main characters. She herself is actually a fictional character, but a seemingly everyday person, despite being fictional. She's also one of the last few people in her story who is considered a true believer when it comes to the world of fiction and superheroes. She dresses up as one and has recently been seen in the comics wielding a sword that allows her to create portals into other worlds. I don't know about you, but I'd say that both both her intentions and her ability to wield a badass portal-creating sword makes her pretty heroic. Also, Ellie has a really cool name that definitely implies she is the one who has the symbolic thematic power to deal with this problem best. She was named Ellipses because her mom believed ellipses represent the idea of the impossible and the great unknown, and that her daughter would be capable of anything. Ellipses makes her first appearance in crossover issue number 1, which was released through Image in November of 2020. Number 7. Radiant Black. Radiant Black is now a couple different people, but originally it was Nathan Burnett, who made his first appearance in Radiant Black issue number 1 and adopted the persona of Radiant Black, eventually brainstorming up his superhero name afterwards with his best friend Marshall. Radiant Black is basically like Power Rangers but for adults, and a series that involves a lot more mystery than the Power Rangers premise, which is pretty front-loading when it comes to the lore behind the Power Rangers in terms of their origin, where their powers come from, and why they were entrusted with these powers in the first place. In Radiant Black, many of these questions go unanswered to start, with us being given little hints along the way as to what is really going on with these Radiants and their hosts. Honestly, it's a brilliant series, and one that has not only given us a super cool new hero in Radiant Black, but has also given us a super cool new cast of heroes with the Radiants, and beyond, a super cool new universe to explore with the Massiveverse. Radiant Black issue number 1 was released via Image in February of 2021. Number 6. Berserker. The character that we initially only know as B is the protagonist of the series Berserker from Boom Studios. He is an ancient warrior, half god, half mortal, who is fighting to learn the truth of his origins and also to learn how to finally put an end to his life, as he is constantly driven towards bloodshed. He ends up accepting a mission to fight for the United States, participating in crazy, perilous, and deadly battles in exchange for this information on his own life. This series was written by Matt Kindt in collaboration with Keanu Reeves, which was where the hype came from for it, but it seems to have been a series that really delivered on this hype because a lot of people love it. While I have yet to read it myself, I have talked to those who have, and there are quite a few out there who just really love this series. It's definitely one that I need to read. The first issue of Berserker was released in March of 2021 and featured the mysterious bloodthirsty bee, who we'd later come to know as Berserker, and it's a property from Boom Studios. Number 5. Twig. Who is Twig? Only the cutest adventuring hero that you will ever meet. He is so endearing, it makes me want to cry. Twig hails from his own self-titled series and begins issue number 1 by starting off on a journey. He has taken up the position that once belonged to his father as the new placeling. What is a placeling exactly? In this magical land, it is a crucial hero who actively saves the world on basically a daily basis, going out and undertaking massive and arduous quests. Twig never really wanted to be a placeling, he wanted to be a chef, but as a result of what suddenly happened to his father, he happens to be really the only one suitable and qualified to take up this position. Twig is just such a sweet character, like kind of a lovable goof, who does his best to live up to the responsibilities passed down to him. Also, the art in this book and the writing will not only make you fall in love with him, but also his best buddy, who resembles a banana slug, Splat, and honestly the whole world, which kind of has like a Dark Crystal sort of feel to it. Twig is from Image Comics and made his first appearance in issue number 1 of his own series in May of 2022. Number 4. Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is one of the newer heroes that we've gotten in the Massiveverse, so yes, there are Radiants and Radiant Black, but they aren't the only heroes in Kyle Higgins' Massiveverse. In the one-shot Supermassive from February 2022, we began to crack the world wide open and were introduced to 2 completely new heroes who existed in the same sort of universe, but not really in the same series, if that makes sense, as Radiant Black. One of them was Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is actually a legacy hero, and after the death of the original Rogue Sun, Marcus Bell, his son, Dylan Siegel, is called upon to take his father's place. One major problem: Dylan isn't even sure he wants any of this, and he has a more than shaky relationship with his dad, even now knowing and understanding that all this time he was a superhero and hence he may have had some somewhat valid reasons for his absence. And what's more, the powers that he inherits also seem to come with quite a bit of a catch in that regard. He kind of has to live with his dad's ghost in his head. Number 3. Inferno Girl Red. Inferno Girl Red! Red! This is a hero I've been waiting to see come out in the comics for some time, ever since I first saw her appear. Well, Inferno Girl Red has only just had her solo series start to come out, which is limited, with 3 issues existing in book 1 of her series, which I believe implies there will be multiple books to this series. Inferno Girl Red herself first appeared in the supermassive one-shot in February 2022, just like Rogue Sun. However, we wouldn't get her in her solo series, where we'd get to learn even more about Cassia Costa, the girl behind Inferno Girl Red, until January of 2023, with issue number 1 also coming from Image, where of course all the Massiverse is published and exists. In solicitation for the first issue, Cassia earns her place on this list as one of our newest ever superheroes from Indie Comics. She is literally described as, and I quote, the newest Image Comics superhero. In the first issue, we learn of how Cassia Costa was mysteriously chosen to become the new Inferno Girl Red after her world was turned upside down in an instant. It feels like we're taking the category of magical girl to a whole nother level and also mixing in some like fabulous future sci-fi stuff with it, which I love, because I love both of those categories. Number 2, The Chosen One. Vanish is just such a cool concept for a comic, and the main character is no exception to the amount of awesome involved here. If you love magical stories, this takes that idea and kind of just like turns it on its head. It answers the question of what happens to young heroes after the evil threat has been vanquished. But it takes a darker turn than most typical happy endings. In Vanish, we follow Oliver Harrison, who is that once young hero, the chosen one grown up. In a world now seemingly devoid of magic, he is haunted by the nightmares from his past and plagued by his own inner demons that he desperately tries at all costs to escape, all while seemingly living an otherwise mundane life. However, Oliver isn't just a washed up former hero. He actually still has held on to a good amount of magic and skills from his past, and must use them to take action once more when a potential new threat appears on the horizon after more than about 20 years apiece, I'd say. Oliver's story is like what would happen to Harry in his adult years if he really didn't want to let go of his past glory and then learn that the Justice League was actually all made up of former Death Eaters. Number 1, Phaedra Essex. Detective Phaedra Essex is the main character of the series Black Cloak. She definitely has an extremely interesting backstory beyond even just her present day story as a detective working in the last known city in all of the world, the city of Kyros. The land Phaedra and her story inhabits is kinda like a cyberpunk world meets a fantasy land where magic still exists but is mostly seemingly coveted by the royals of this land, the privileged few. Phaedra herself used to be a royal, or is a royal, but you know, one who has been exiled, so no longer acknowledging that status. The story only has 1 issue so far, so really she's quite new when it comes to like her appearance and what's going on with her. So we don't know that much about her just yet, but what we do know is that she is determined and unafraid of putting herself in dangerous situations, that is for sure. Phaedra made her first appearance in Image Comics in Black Cloak issue number 1 in January 2023.
10. Tosin Oduye. Tosin is such a cool character. Okay, so as a kid, Tosin Oduye saw the way that Wakanda became a socially isolated nation who believed themselves superior and seemed to always attract war. The Marube, the tribe Tosin belongs to, began to separate a bit from the main Wakandan people. They hated the way Wakanda used vibranium for tech, so they instead found a way to refine the vibranium and flow with it. They gave themselves vibranium tattoos, and some in their tribe, who trained hard enough, could have the vibranium flow with them, granting them some pretty cool powers. It's like they harness the energy of vibranium and can use it to move extremely fast, or unleash vibranium energy blasts, or even seemingly grant himself a vibranium armor. Last thing I want to say is that the covers for the issues of this volume of Black Panther are just so cool. Definitely check it out.
Number 9. Aleph Chernikov. Aleph Chernikov is a young mutant hero who appears in the Wolverine Patch flashback series by Larry Hama. This was a miniseries that came out earlier in 2022 and covered an untold tale from Patch's adventures in Madripoor back in the good old days. Here Patch works to help 3 Russian mutants who have escaped their government, but have been tracked to Madripoor. Madripoor is military, royal armed guards, as well as S.H.I.E.L.D. and Russia themselves appear to be after the mutants, but Patch, Archie, and Tiger intervene in hopes of helping the three. In the end they do, and among them is Aleph, the child of the other two mutants, David and Raisa. Aleph appears to be the main focus of everyone's efforts when it comes to hunting them down. They possess powerful healing abilities, psionic abilities, and possibly even the power to manipulate reality. But they're also a child, so of course everyone's like, we gotta protect this baby. Number 8. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme made his first appearance in Jason Aaron's run on Avengers, which started all the way back in 2018 and is still currently ongoing. Soldier Supreme would not make his first appearance until issue number 50 of the series, meaning that he appeared for the first time in the comics back in December of 2021. Soldier Supreme is a magical superhero from the 1940s who also would be trained by the Ancient One and become the leader of the Secret Invaders. Despite existing in the past in the comics, he would be introduced as a retcon character in the present, our present, during an adventure the Avengers had involving time travel. Soldier Supreme is Sebastian Zardos, possibly related to another Phoenix host who is also a Zardos, or perhaps even possibly distantly related to the adoptive family of Nightcrawler, who are also the Zardoses. Who knows? Sebastian was known to have descended from old powerful magic through the witches of Wundagore Mountain. Number 7. Moon Knight. No, not Mark Spector of Earth 616. Obviously, he has been around for some time and is not really new, making his first appearance back in the 70s in Werewolf by Night issue number 32. But you know who is new? The Moon Knight of Earth 818, a hero who first appeared in the 2021 volume of Avengers Forever in issue number 1. This Moon Knight is known by the name of Mariama Spector. She appears at the end of that first issue where we learn she is part of the team that an alternate Tony Stark as Ant-Man seems to lead. Tony of Earth 818 calls his team together after believing that something is shifting and that they might actually stand a chance at saving the whole world. Or whatever. Mariama would appear within the first issues of this run of Avengers Forever, and would also appear in some of the later issues in the series too. The first issue of the 2021 Avengers Forever series was released in December of 2021. Number 6. Tosin Oduye. Tosin Oduye is a hero that made his first debut in the current Black Panther series by John Ridley. He made his first appearance in issue number 3 of this 2022 series. He is a hero of Wakanda, but is actually greatly separated from Wakanda in some ways as well. He belongs to the Marube tribe, who chose to separate from the mainland of Wakanda and basically isolate themselves as they rejected the ideas of many who believed that vibranium should be bended to their own will and used like a tool. Instead, his people focused on finding a more natural approach to vibranium, finding natural ways to temper it, and focusing on flowing with vibranium as opposed to using it simply to do whatever they felt vibranium should be used to do. The Marube cover themselves in vibranium tattoos, and this is how they are given their powers. The Marube had seen much war come and go during the generations, and their goal was and is to basically stand as Wakanda's protectors when the time comes. Following the transition from a monarchy to a democracy, Tosin was one of the heroes who rose up to protect the new Prime Minister of Wakanda, declaring himself as Tosin, who fights for the one true Wakanda. Number 5. Amass. Amass is one of the mutants who is new despite actually being really old in terms of the history in the comics. In fact, possibly one of the oldest mutants we've ever seen. They made their first appearance in Marauders issue number 4, the current volume by Steve Orlando, not the previous run by Jerry Dugan. This is volume 2 we are talking about here, which started in 2022. Amass is actually one of my favorite new mutants when it comes to their power set and their potential. They can combine living beings into one, amassing and unifying them into one entity. For mutants that join together, this is exceptionally cool, as all the mutants' powers will be contained within one being, making them, while combined, extremely powerful. And I believe that if Amass were to do this with regular superheroes that were non-mutant superheroes, that would also be true, which is pretty cool. You could also combine non-mutant superheroes and probably mutants. The potential's crazy. If they have the right power sets, as we learn in the current Marauders series, while combined, the mutants can even use their powers together to do things like time travel. Pretty wild, right? Number 4. Thea. Thea is another mutant who comes from the very first mutant civilization, which actually existed way in the past, but basically were all wiped out. Their history hidden away for millennia by the Shi'ar, or more specifically, the secret was kept by the Shi'ar's secret society known as the Kin Crimson, who are basically supposed to keep some of the worst Shi'ar secrets secret to protect the Shi'ar and protect the crown. Thea was one of the mutants from the Threshold, the name for their ancient mutant civilization, who had their consciousness, memories, and genetic data stored within a codex, with the hopes that one day someone would retrieve that and be able to free those locked safely within it, bringing them back into the living physical plane. This group was known as the Threshold 3 and included Amass and Crave as well. Thea herself is a time manipulator, with her mutant power being chronokinesis. She and Tempo seem to develop a closer connection early on in the Marauder series. Thea first appears in the same issue that Amass first appeared in, issue number 4. Number 3. Monolith. Gosh, I love Monolith's design. Monolith seems to be an ally to the Hulk. Currently, the Hulk in his own series, titled simply Hulk, is flying around space, but is actually the mind of Bruce Banner in the body of the Hulk, with Bruce having taken control and modified Hulk's body to turn him into like a spaceship, basically. Having always wanted to live as a scientist and explore the world and go on cool space adventures, Bruce struggles to see a home for himself on Earth after everything he has done, and so he decides to actually just take control of the Hulk and go to outer space. A sort of self-imposed exile, if you will, but one where he gets to like actually do what he wants to do as a scientist. While on his space adventures, he runs into a kind of planet Hulk that seems to be perfect for people like him. It seems exiled Hulks, who were dubbed abominations in an alternate reality that they hail from, seem to have come to this planet and ended up settling here, all becoming super strong and smart over time. Initially they were basically exiled there, but then they basically just decided to create their own civilization. Monolith is their ruler, being the queen of this seemingly Hulk planet. Honestly, her existence is one of my favorite things about this entire series. She first appears in issue number 9 of the current Hulk series, volume number 5 from 2022. And while, yeah, we don't really know if she's like specifically a superhero yet, I feel like she's leaning that way. Number 2. Wreck-Rap. Who is Wreck-Rap? Well, he very recently made his first appearance at Amazing Spider-Man issue number 17, where that question is, of course, answered. Wreck-Rap is a demon from Limbo who admires Spider-Man, looking up to him. He originally takes the name of Parker Man for himself. He ends up becoming an ally and supporting character in the current Amazing Spider-Man story, Dark Web. In issue number 17, Parker saved him from another demon who basically wanted to beat up the latter named Parker Man. This act inspires him to want to be a hero like Parker Peach Man, and so he sets out to try and get superpowers. In the end, he instead gets a symbiote and ends up taking a new name for himself after he is told that the demon army doesn't really need another Parker and that he had it backwards. After all, they weren't looking for more heroes, they were actually looking for more villains. The name this demon settles on is of course Wreck-Rap because it is Parker backwards. Get it? Because they were like, you got it all backwards, and he was like, alright, I'll have it backwards then. Number 1. Red Goblin. While Normie Osborn, grandson of Norman Osborn and son of Harry Osborn and Liz Allen, is a character who has been around since the 1980s and even became a villainous version of Carnage and the Goblin combined, known as the Goblin Child, back in 2018. He also recently underwent a new change, becoming known as Red Goblin himself. At first, I was worried that Norman would actually be returning to this mantle when this was teased, the return of Red Goblin, and almost instantly, of course, then returning to the side of villainy after only recently becoming good in the comics. Goodness. But it looks like, at least in terms of Red Goblin's return and that character's identity, I was wrong, which I'm happy about. Red Goblin instead returned to us in Venom issue number 15 from volume 5, the 2022 run, as Normie Osborn. Normie was given a symbiote that is the result of the combination of both the Carnage symbiote and the anti-Venom symbiote. While in his Red Goblin guise, he seems to be acting solely as a hero who basically aims to help his friend Dylan Brock, aka currently known as Codex, save his father Eddie Brock, currently the King in Black in his Bedlam phase, and formerly known as the anti-hero, and I would say now full-fledged hero, Venom.
Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Number 8. Jace Fox's Batman. Okay, yes. I'm structuring this a little differently. So after the death of the Justice League, 5 legacy characters have been teased to be stepping up into the mantles of their predecessors. Timothy Jace Fox seems to be the one stepping into the role of Batman. First appearing in Dark Knight's Death Metal #7 last year, he actually took on the role of Batman after Gotham became a police state ruled by the Magistrate, who hunted down masked characters, and Batman seemingly met his demise. That's Bruce Wayne Batman. Jace wears a batsuit very similar to the classic, only with a full face covering. In the art for the new Dark Crisis coming out next month, he seems to just have a regular cowl though. He has created a new bat symbol and has teamed up with Jason Todd Nightwing. He also hums to himself while fighting criminals, which is kinda cute, honestly. Number 7. Jo Maleen's Green Lantern. Sojourner Maleen was granted a Green Lantern ring after she was unceremoniously fired from the New York City police force. She became the Green Lantern of an unnumbered sector, with her first main job being in the City Enduring, an alien planet city inhabited by 3 previously warring races. She's tasked with solving the city's first murder in 500 years. It's pretty serious. Jo's ring recharges over time instead of requiring a battery, which, as a trade-off, makes it a bit weaker. It's still a Green Lantern ring though, so she ain't someone to mess with. This non-reliance also proves really useful when the central power battery explodes at a Green Lantern meeting Jo was running late to, taking out a bunch of lanterns and depowering a whole heck of a lot more of them. She took charge here like a true hero should. She has been teased to be taking over the role of Green Lantern. Obviously. Number 6. Jackson Hyde's Aquaman. Jackson Hyde is actually the son of one of Aquaman's main villains, Black Manta. But luckily, he fights for justice, hence being part of this video. As Aqualad, with his hydrokinesis and Atlantean powers, he has been a part of the Teen Titans, Young Justice, and has fought alongside Aquaman against his own father, and has even temporarily stepped into the mantle of Aquaman in one of his major story arcs. He has proven himself capable, if not a little undisciplined, and he, alongside Jo Maleen, Jace Fox, Yara Flor, and John Kent, was part of the alternate Justice League in Future State, so we know he has the means to take over the role. Just like the last two, he is poised to take over the position of Aquaman, allegedly, in the upcoming Justice League. Number 5. Yara Flor's Wonder Woman. Ayla was an Amazonian who left Themyscira and settled in Brazil, where she fell in love with a Brazilian river deity. You know, like you do. The child these two would create became the Amazonian Brazilian demigod Yara Flor. Living in an Amazonian village, they were attacked by agents of the Greek gods, and Ayla lost her life. But Yara was taken to Idaho by a woman named Renata, who became her adopted mother. After her return to Brazil, she gets magical golden boleadoras, meets a human she hits it off with, is stabbed with an arrow by Eros, who she falls in love with, and is taken to Mount Olympus, where she is trained, given gifts, and gets a Pegasus named Jerry. Nice. She's offered the role of becoming Hera's champion, but after learning of her true origins, she refuses, and after a lot of scuffling, she brings some Amazons to defeat those responsible for the de-lifing of her own mother. She has become Wonder Girl, and was Wonder Woman in that Future State Justice League I keep talking about to defend my reason for putting these characters on this list. It'll be cool to see her actually step into the role of Wonder Woman, if that's what happens. Number 4. John Kent. And last, but extremely not the least, Apparently, stepping into the role of Superman in the Justice League will be none other than his own son, Jonathan Samuel Kent. Look, it just makes sense. John obviously was a member of the League's reserves before this point, but taking over the role of his father would be a big step up if it is ultimately what comes to pass. The son of Clark and Lois Lane, Jonathan began fighting crime at the age of 10. John possesses all the same powers as his father, plus a solar radiation explosion thing that isn't really under his control. According to Batman, he actually has the potential to surpass his father's power levels thanks to his half-human physiology, which kind of makes no sense to me, but whatever. Jonathan actually became Superman when his father left Earth to go to War World, so he has had a bit of experience, which will hopefully help him if he does become the new Superman of the Justice League next month. And that covers every one of the characters teased to take over the respective roles in the League. A few of these characters are part of the future Justice League, so it remains to be seen what role exactly these few will play, and I may have doomed myself to be roasted in the comments, so there's that. Number 3, Hippolyta, or however you want to say it. Queen of Themyscira, she takes over the role of Wonder Woman in the Justice League in the Infinite Frontier storyline. Now, Diana isn't perished. Well, she is now, but not when her mother took over in the Justice League. Diana had ascended after defeating the Darkest Night, and with Hippolyta having dubbed Nubia as the newest ruler of Themyscira, she was pretty free to take on the role in the Justice League. It's interesting to see her interact with Aquaman, and the small amount of time her and the #1 spot got to work together was also rather interesting. As an Amazonian, she possesses pretty much all the same powers as her daughter, just better because, you know, she's been around longer. Unfortunately, this whole thing didn't last very long with the whole death of the Justice League thing. Number 2, Naomi McDuffie. Joining the team just after our #1 spot in Justice League Volume 4, number 63, Naomi McDuffie is a teenage energy-based hero who was actually sent to the Prime Earth from an alternate reality to be spared from this really crazy villain, Zumbado, who rules over her native Earth. While her powers are unstable and she hasn't quite learned a complete control over them yet, Powerhouse's powers are confirmed to be Omega level in nature, so that's enough to put her pretty high on this list. She basically transforms into a golden armored superpowered form, which gives her a kind of energy projection that she uses to enhance her punches, making them very super indeed, and she also uses them to fire energy blasts. Interestingly, Naomi can also augment magical powers, kind of opposite to how Superman is weakened by them. In her super form, she can fly and obviously has super strength and durability. Number 1, Black Adam? What? That's right, joining the Justice League in Volume 4, number 60 of the team's self-titled comic, thanks to an invite from Superman, it's my second favorite Adam other than myself. Teth Adam was an unwilling laborer back in ancient Egypt who received power from the wizard Shazam, just like that other guy in red with a lightning bolt. What was his name again? I forget. Black Adam actually loses his life, and after his resurrection was no longer powered by the wizard. Instead, he gained his power from 6 Egyptian deities: Shu, Horus, Amun, Sehuti, Aten, and Mehen. Funny how they happen to still spell it Shazam though, huh? And he still shouts Shazam to activate his powers too, naturally. He also makes for quite a great leader, being the ruler of the African nation of Kondak. However, he hasn't traditionally been a great team player, and well, the whole supervillain anti-hero thing doesn't really help his case either. I'm just interested to see where this goes, to be perfectly honest. Number 10, the Wonder Twins. Look, they aren't really Justice League members, but they were interns, which is like part of the way there, right? Maybe. If you watched that video about weird DC multiverse characters, then you know these two. The Wonder Twins are 2 alien siblings from the planet Exor, who possess some interesting shape-changing powers. The sister Jaina has the ability to transform into any animal, which is a potentially very useful and powerful ability, and it's always pretty fun. The brother, on the other hand, Zan, is capable of turning into water in any of its states, so liquid, steam, or ice. Again, potentially pretty cool, but more often it's not though. And honestly, he always seems to play second fiddle to his sister anyways. The two were first introduced in Super Friends, where they were much more cheesy and did a whole lot of fist bumping. They still do, but it's sweet now. Number 9, Hawk Girl, a classic. After assisting in the defeat of Barbados and the Dark Knights, Kendra Saunders' Hawk Girl was recruited to join the new Justice League as Hawk Girl, a core member of the team. Nice. While not a totally new character, she did have a fight with Barbados, and that gave her this new nth metal fusion power. This gives her nth metal psychoreactive wings that look totally awesome. They can slice through flesh and are able to completely heal all by themselves. She has been reincarnated so many times and has so much experience that she makes an extremely effective and powerful member of the Justice League. As well as her cool new wings, Kendra also has several powers including enhanced strength, enhanced durability, enhanced vision, accelerated healing, self-sustenance, and has been taught telepathic resistance by Martian Manhunter. Unfortunately, she was one of those members of the League affected by the death of the Justice League thing. But that leads us directly into the next 5 points, so that's good. Number 8. Canary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red #1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Canary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idea's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated. and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants. Like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest. And coming in at number 10, Vanish. Image Comics seems to be going back to its gritty, magical roots with Vanish. Vanish follows Oliver Harrison. This chosen one peaked at the age of 14 when he took down the leader of the biggest threat to his universe in a mystical place called the Everkeep. Now, as an adult, this chosen one indulges in every vice he can, living a mediocre, pretty sloppy life. Until a group of heroes show up called the Prestige, who are actually the followers of the threat that Oliver took down when he was 14. Now, using his magical abilities, Oliver takes it on himself to play the part of a hero in the disguise of a villain to bring down the heroic Prestige. The comic builds up this super cool, magic but violent world. It's incredibly gritty but filled with dark fantasy and magic, and it's just so cool. Number 9, Rogue Sun. Dylan Siegel has been living life with his mom when he's suddenly called to a reading of his estranged father's will. Now, during that reading, he discovers his dear old dad was a superhero called Rogue Sun, and now Dylan has been granted the superhero mantle for himself. Now, this super angsty teen is in charge of protecting our world from the forces of the supernatural, while also trying to figure out who exactly took down his dad. The art in this story is awesome, and Rogue Sun's suit is incredibly cool. With really cool fire-based abilities and a whole lot of family drama, Rogue Sun from Image Comics is a fun story you should definitely check out. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Synch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours, until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1! Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast no more mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Dr. Multiverse. Alright, breaking away from Image Comics now and landing firmly in DC's territory, we have Maya Chamara, Dr. Multiverse. Dr. Multiverse is alone in the multiverse, meaning there is only one of her. Originating from Earth 8, Maya was bathed in cosmic energies and was granted the powers of the multiverse, which basically means that she's able to see variants and alternate versions of people living in different realities. She can see people and objects passing between dimensions, and she has the ability to locate and track anything she has come into contact with throughout the multiverse. She also has access to vast energy manipulation abilities, which let her fire blasts and create shields, but she can totally open up portals to other universes and send people back to their own universe. This former member of the Retaliators became part of the Justice League Incarnate, using her multiversal powers to help this multiversal team of heroes. She's like a DC version of Marvel's Captain Universe, Starbrand, and America Chavez all just mixed into one, but I think she's pretty alright. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, make sure you drop a like to let us know you want more videos similar to this one. Just one little click's all you gotta do. Thanks. Number 7. Batwalker. I'm gonna be honest, I just assumed this had already been done in the past, but no. Dinosaur versions of DC's superheroes had not been done before. I'm alright with this because that means this year we were treated to the Jurassic League, a DC story that takes place on an Earth where heroes like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman are actually dinosaurs that protect the puny human race from the carnivore dinosaurs who would eat them. There's a Brachiosaurus Supersaur from another world who looks eerily eerily like Superman, a Triceratops Wonder Dawn hailing from the Isle of Trimascara, and on the outskirts of Growltham City, we are introduced to Bat Walker, an Allosaurus who dresses up like a bat after the loss of his parents at the hands of an insane Dilophosaurus who goes by the name Jokerzard. I mean, there's even a panel of this comically green Allosaurus throwing a stone batarang, and it's just something that I never knew I needed in my life until this point. I'm just so glad it exists. Number 6, the Spirit of Variance, Vox Igni. Sean Cassidy is not a new character by any stretch of the imagination, but in Legion of X number 7 by Marvel, he does become something completely new. Sean was betrayed by Moira McTaggart, who stole his face so she could enter into Krakoa. So when he was brought back to life, he was rather upset. Now there's a whole thing going on as well with the character of Legion right now that I just can't get into, but essentially a character named Mother Righteous offers Legion a gift in the form of a certain kind of power. David Haller refuses this gift, but luckily for us, Sean Cassidy was there to take it instead. Making a deal with Mother Righteous, Cassidy was given, or I guess possessed by, a cast out spirit of vengeance called the Spirit of Variance. This transformed Banshee into a flaming skull version of himself named Vox Igni, which is the voice of fire, and if a name like that doesn't sound cool to you, then just look at this character. Good golly, he's awesome. Number 5, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats in this story, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out this year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet. Maybe one day I'll let you guys see it. Maybe. But definitely read this story. Definitely do it. Number 4, Miracle Man. Miracle Man is also not a new character. In fact, Marvel's Miracle Man is one of comics' most dramatic publishing debacles, coming back from 1954. Decades of rights battles over the character meant that he kind of bounced around publishers and then disappeared from the pages of comics altogether for a long time. Which is why it seemed way too good to be true when Marvel announced in 2013 that it had acquired the rights to Miracle Man. Now, over the years, the company has attempted to bring the character back, but even more legal issues kind of stopped that from being able to happen. But luckily, starting in October 2022, Neil Gaiman finally continued the Silver Age arc that he had created for the character, with Marvel planning a number of other Miracle Man books. So now, after all this time, we get both one of the newest and kind of one of the oldest characters all wrapped up into one awesome Miracle Man, Marvel Man, Mickey Moran, whatever you want to call him, shaped package. Number 3, Abyss. Alright, before you jump on me in the comments, this isn't the villain Abyss. That guy was Lex Luthor's own evil Batman, who was honestly kinda cool, but he did not last very long. Abyss was defeated by Batman, who got some massive help from a Bodnesian police officer named Detective Kea, who helped Batman not only survive, but even forced Abyss to retreat after he had defeated most of Batman Incorporated, which led him straight into a defeat at the hands of the Dark Knight himself. Now, after Abyss had been defeated, Kaya found some of the villain's equipment and decided to hunt down the ones who had ended her parents' lives. There's a lot of parallels between Batman and the characters in and around him in the later issues of Batman Volume 3 that came out this year in 2022. Anyways, Batman offered to help Kaya, but in helping her, he also talked her into just arresting the criminals instead of doing what she was planning to do, which I'm sure you can imagine what that was. She wasn't brought into Batman Inc., but she is now another ally of Batman, and I hope she gets some more appearances in the comics from this point on because the costume's pretty cool. Number 2, the Joneses. How how about a whole family of superheroes for this spot? And not just that, but also some social and political commentary wrapped up into it. That sounds like so much fun. Not really. Anyways, out of AWA Studios comes The Joneses, which is a spin-off of another AWA Studios comic called The Resistance, and it focuses on a suburban family who have gained superpowers after a global pandemic known as the Great Death. All 4 family members, mother, father, sister, and brother, were all transformed into something superhuman, but unfortunately, the world has begun to embrace fascism, born of fear of the pandemic and the superpowered individuals that have appeared, known as the Reborns. The Joneses face some pretty scary consequences if they are exposed as reborns, and so they are presented with the dilemma of using their abilities for good at the risk of exposing themselves and inviting danger, or just laying low and staying out of the way. It's an interesting little idea for a comic book, and the global pandemic idea seems a little bit familiar. I don't know why. So I found it fun to just jump into this little 2022 comic from AWA Studios, and maybe you will too. Number 1. Guts and Glory. If you're part of the Thunderbolts, are you really a hero? Yes, you are. The problem for me and this list is that when Guts and Glory first appeared in Thunderbolts Volume 4, Number 1 from August 2022, we weren't really given much information on the guy, and we still haven't been, really, which makes my job way harder. He was placed on Hawkeye's Thunderbolts team under the Mayor of New York, Luke Cage. The only reason given for this character's introduction to the team was that apparently having a, quote, man of mystery would do wonders for the team's public relations. That's actually the reason. There's literally nothing else given about why he's here. He is a big stocky guy with cyborg body parts and an absolutely insane amount of weaponry, including a particle rupture laser, which I don't even want to imagine what that thing does to a person. It just sounds horrible. He also looks a bit like Cable, as he's a totally 90s cyber-inspired warrior, but just more military and not nearly as old as Cable, with absolutely no information about his backstory, again, or his training. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marvel. Please change this. Gutson is cool, okay? Thank you.